Welcome back for the last series of 4 videos for top 100 favorite Nintendo games of all time. So, with that said, first up a quick refresher. First up, starting at 100, Midway Greatest Arcade Hits, GBA, Kingdom Hearts, Chain of Memories, Final Fantasy 1, Sega 3D Classics Collection, Donkey Kong Country Jr., Pokemon Snap, Geist, Star Fox 2, Kingdom Hearts Recoded, Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link, Earthbound, Super Mario 64, To the Moon, Flashback, Pokemon Emerald, The Legend of Zelda, Epic Mickey, Oddworld Stranger's Wrath, HD, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask 3D, Original Star Fox, Xenoblade Chronicles X, Pac-Man, Super Mario Kart, A Hat in Time, Zombie U, The World Ends With You, F-Zero, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, The Legend of Zelda A Link Between Worlds, Punch-Out, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, New Super Mario Bros. 2, L.A. Noira, NES Remix Pack 1 and 2, Star Wars Episode 1 Pod Racing, Donkey Kong Country, Street Fighter 30th Anniversary Collection, Golden Sun Dark Dawn, Pikmin 3, Super Smash for N64, Ice Climber. Also tied with it was Super Smash Ultimate, Ice Climber, Monster Hunter Rise, Resident Evil 0 / Resident Evil Remake, Sonic Gems Collection, Star Wars Rogue Squadron, Skullgirls Second Encore, Silent Hill Shattered Memories, Kingdom Hearts 358 Over 2 Days, Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, Super Metroid. Then at 50, Excitebike, 49, Bloody Roar Primal Fury, 48, Killer Instinct, 47, Dead or Alive Dimensions, 46, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 1 and 2. Then we have at 45, Super Mario RPG, 44, Cave Story Plus, 43, Tekken Tag Tournament 2 Wii U Edition, 42, Pokemon Stadium, 41, Luigi's Mansion, 40, Super Mario Sunshine, 39, Ultra Street Fighter 2, 38, WCW NWO Revenge, 37, Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, 36, Super Mario Maker, 35, Final Fantasy 2/4, 34, Panzer Dragoon Remake, 33, Pokemon Coliseum, 32, Hyrule Warriors, 31, 007 GoldenEye, 30, WWF No Mercy, 29, Super Smash Melee, 28, New Super Mario Bros. U and Luigi's U, 27, Perfect Dark, 26, Super Smash Bros. For the Wii U / 3DS. And now, here we are at number 25, released on the Super Nintendo, one of my probably my favorite boxing game of all time. Top 3 are the original, of course, Punch-Out for NES, Ready to Rumble Boxing Round 2, and This game is arguably my favorite boxing game of all time. At 25, released for the Super Nintendo, Super Punch Out, which it's sad how this game often gets overlooked. I am happy at least it was included in the SNES Classic, which is good because it deserves more recognition than it gets for many classic characters that I really like. Mr. Sandman is one of my personal favorite characters in the game to fight. You also have Rick and Nick Bruiser, which are nightmares to fight against. Also, coming at 24, released for the 3DS as well as the Switch. Minecraft. Yes, Minecraft. As I've said before, I'll say it again. I love Minecraft. It's one of my favorite games of all time, and I don't think anything will ever change it. Sadly, the 3DS version, to be fair, is fine, and I do like the 3D effect, actually, with playing Minecraft. Is kind of cool, especially if a creeper or something pops out of nowhere, or an Enderman. Makes things a little more interesting. It doesn't run the greatest, still it's not bad. The Switch version is actually pretty good, I'll be honest, but like most of the time I play predominantly the PS4 version of the game, so. Coming at 23, released for the Nintendo Switch, and that is from the creator of the greatest, of course, Castlevania game of all time, that being Symphony of the Night. Coming at 23 is Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, which is a superb game that deserves so much love. I am a avid defender and lover of this game. Next, coming in at number 22, released for the Nintendo GameCube. In my opinion, this is the definitive way to play this classic 3D Sonic game, and that being at 22, Sonic Adventures, or Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. I think this is definitely the definitive way to play Sonic Adventure 2 in the best way. If you have the chance to play the game, play it. And I specifically, if you want to play it on the Dreamcast, go right ahead. You can get it a little cheaper on the GameCube, and I actually think it runs very good on the GameCube as well. Plus, you get extra additional content. That's another positive about this version. Coming in at 21, released for the Super Nintendo, it was the very first compilation / game collection that I would ever have, and I have a real love, and I think this is the best way to play the classic original Mario games, in my opinion. Coming in at 21 is Super Mario All-Stars, which has, of course, Mario 1, 2, and 3, and also Super Mario The Lost Levels. So, if you get a chance, get this collection, though. And yeah, you can get this digitally as well, thanks to a virtual console. But to me, this is just a great way to play these classics rather than play them in their original format, that being, of course, originally on the NES. Plus, if you're interested in physical, you can get like the physical version on Super Nintendo for a very reasonable price, in my opinion. Coming in at number 20, we go back again to the Super Nintendo for number 20, and that is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which is one of my top 3 favorite Zelda games of all time. As I said before, I'll say it again. I think Link to the Past is somewhat overlooked and overshadowed by the N64 Zelda games. Don't get me wrong, I like the N64 era of Zelda. Specifically, I think Ocarina of Time is great, though I also feel that Majora's Mask deserves a little more love than it gets. Coming in at number 19, we go to the GameCube. And it was interesting with this game series, originally best well known as a side-scrolling game, and then it would be sort of reinvented on the GameCube as a first-person shooter style, which is actually really interesting, and it surprisingly worked very well for itself. It's a great sci-fi game. Coming in at number 19 is Metroid Prime. Coming in at number 18, release for the Nintendo Wii. As I said before, I'll say again, this is arguably my personal favorite of the Smash series. Um, Coming in at 18 is Super Smash Bros. Brawl. Like I said before, Brawl is easily my personal favorite of the series, predominantly because it has the most single player content out of all the games in the series. And I don't like how sometimes this game gets disrespected. Yes, Melee is great, but I don't think it's as good as some people would have you believe Melee actually is. Brawl is equally as good and has way more first or single player content. Keep in mind, it's my own personal opinion. Everyone has their own opinions. Coming in at 17 is arguably one of the coolest and most revolutionary survival horror games, definitely of the 6th console generation, and easily, probably just about my favorite horror game on the GameCube. Coming in and with that really cool sanity meter is what made it really awesome. Coming at number 17 is Eternal Darkness Sanity's Requiem, which is a game that deserves a lot more love, and as a fan of H.P. Lovecraft with the whole Cthulhu mythos and everything, one of the things I really like about this game is how it definitely brings me a lot of elements of Lovecraft world and universe he created. Coming in at 16, release for the GameCube, is arguably one of, I think, the best collections there's ever been, and that is coming at 16, the Sonic Mega Collection, which has pretty much all the classic Sonic games through everything on the Genesis. And the fact it also includes Bing Bing Machine. It's an extra thumb up for me because I love Bing Bing Machine. I also actually like Sonic Spinball quite a bit. It's a shame that some of these games get overlooked more, though also, to be fair, you also have Sonic and Knuckles, which you can't go wrong with that game. But if you're a Sonic lover, this is definitely a collection to have. Coming in at number 15, we go to the Nintendo 3DS. At 15 is Pokemon X and Y, though I've only actually played Pokemon Y. It's actually, for me personally, it is easily in my top 5 favorite Pokemon games of all time. Also my top 5 favorite 3DS games of all time. But for me, Pokemon X and Y is a lot of fun. I think it's probably the most fun I've had with a handheld Pokemon game since going all the way back to the Game Boy Advance, with games like Pokemon Emerald and Fire Red. I genuinely had a blast. I never really got into Pokemon Black and White, but I really liked it, and this was the first also complete full 3D game on handheld. And I have tried my friend's copy of Pokemon Sword and Shield. It's okay, but I actually like X and Y more than Shield and Sword, or Sword and Shield, however you want to see it. Coming in at 14, going back to the GameCube, arguably one of the best fighting games you could play of the 6th console generation, and pretty much just about the best fighting game on the GameCube. Coming in at 14 is Capcom vs. SNK 2EO, which is easily also one of my favorite games on the original Xbox. But it's a lot of fun, and it is nice to have a great classic style Capcom fighting game, and the fact you can't go wrong with Capcom vs. SNK 2, as I hold it in maybe just a little higher than Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It really depends on the person. This was the game that really got me more into SNK games in general, so I have to owe a lot of thanks to this game, especially for turning me into a big fan of Rugal. Also, coming in next at number 13, staying with the GameCube, is one of arguably the best, I think, console Star Wars games of all time. And that being, and funny enough, it was also a launch title for the GameCube. And it was definitely a great launch title at that. That being Star Wars Rogue Leader, Rogue Squadron 2. It is arguably, to this day, I actually do like a decent amount Rogue Leader over the original Rogue Squadron on the N64. I never really played the second game after this on the GameCube, never really played it ever. But Rogue Leader is a game I still have, and I don't plan on ever getting rid of. It's one of those games that's just a blast to get to play. I mean, if you're a big fan of the original trilogy, then you definitely appreciate this game. Also, coming in at 11, we go to modern, or we go to a bit closer to modern, and that is, we go back to the 3DS. Coming at number 12 is arguably one of my personal favorite of the Kingdom Hearts series. Top 5 easily. If not, possibly like third place. That being at 12, Kingdom Hearts 3D, Dream Drop Distance, which is a great game, and I really like the Pokemon, basically, you might as well call it the Dream Eaters. I like them quite a bit. I like the ability to be able to synthesize and create your stuff, and you can add and augment a little bit the Dream Eaters you make. Also, I love some of the worlds in the game, like Hunchback of Notre Dame world I like quite a bit. Love the fact they did the story from Tron Legacy in a world. Fantasia World is just awesome with the Nutcracker music in the background, everything. But with that said, yeah, I genuinely love Dream Drop Distance as I've beat the game 5 times. Coming in next at number 10 is a game that needs no true introduction. It is one of the greatest RPGs of all time, if not one of the greatest, probably top 10 greatest Square games ever made, and one of the best Super Nintendo games of all time. Coming at number 10 is Chrono Trigger, which of course all the box art and everything for the characters and designs were all done by my favorite manga / anime artist of all time, Akira Toriyama. Of course, the creator of Dragon Ball Z, as well as the creator or artist in charge of Chrono Trigger, as well as the Dragon Quest series. So, next up, we go to number 9, and we're going to go to basically a game that's technically on 2 different platforms. And that is my number 2 favorite Zelda game of all time. And number 9 is The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess, which is on GameCube, as well as on Wii, and of course HD on Wii U. And I have all 3 versions. I mean, I do love this game a lot. I still on occasion will play the GameCube version, though I would say arguably it's probably best to play the Wii U version, in my opinion, nowadays. Speaking of, coming next at number 8 is easily in my top 3 favorite N64 games of all time. Also one of my favorite games on the 3DS of the 3DS re-releases of the game. That being, of course, Star Fox 64 comes in at number 8. One of my favorite N64 games of all time, and it was I believe, if I remember correctly, this was like my first or second N64 game I ever owned. So, needless to say, Star Fox holds a very special place for me personally, because of the nostalgia factor heavily. Coming in at number 7, released originally on the Super Nintendo, here in the West it would be released as Final Fantasy III, but in reality it would be Final Fantasy VI. Comes in at number 7. All-time classic Final Fantasy game, and I don't think anybody will really ever debate Final Fantasy VI, and if you do, you probably actually never played through the game. As the fact, Kefka is one of the greatest Final Fantasy and RPG villains of all time. I love Sephiroth, but let's be honest, Sephiroth is just a little overrated. Kefka is on a whole different level from him. Kefka is the Joker of Final Fantasy, is the best way to put it. Not because of the way he looks, but because he loves chaos. He loves chaos and destruction. Basically, imagine Joker if he had the powers of a god. You have Kefka. Coming in at number 6 is arguably my personal favorite Mario game of all time and will probably never be dethroned out. And that being, coming at number 6, Super Mario World, which is a superb game. And oh, I just now noticed I accidentally skipped over number 11. My bad. Quickly mention, number 11 is my second favorite Mario game of all time, Super Mario Odyssey for the Switch. Next, coming in at number 5, released originally for the Game Boy Color, though I prefer the re-release for the Game Boy Advance. Coming at number 5 is my favorite Pokemon game of all time, pretty much between, well, technically it's between Pokemon Yellow Pikachu Edition and Pokemon Fire Red. Also, coming in at number 4 is by far my favorite, barely just above SNK, or just above Capcom vs. SNK 2, coming in as my favorite GameCube fighter of all time, Soul Calibur 2. And mostly has to do with the fact Link is awesome in the game. Coming in at number 3 is my favorite side-scrolling 2D platformer of all time, and my personal number 2 favorite Super Nintendo game of all time. Heavily influenced by nostalgia. Mega Man X comes in at number 3, favorite Nintendo game ever. Next, coming in at number 2 is easily my favorite Legend of Zelda game of all time. Released originally on the GameCube, and then we get an HD re-release on the Wii U. And of course, that is The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, which is just still such a beautiful looking game. It's aged very well on the GameCube because of the cel-shaded art style. And this would be the game that would heavily get me into cel-shaded art style games in the first place. This, and then also Dragon Ball Z Budokai 2 and 3. But with that up, before I announce number 1, welcome back. Change the music and stuff for my number 1 favorite Nintendo game of all time. We're going back to the Super Nintendo, and for many years, probably about 15 years, this game would be my number 1 favorite fighting game of all time. Slowly, another game would end up dethroning it over time, but it took a very long time. It remained my top favorite 2D fighting game of all time for a decade and a half. Coming at number 1 favorite Nintendo game of all time for the Super Nintendo, Street Fighter II Turbo. One of the only games I've genuinely went out of my way to get complete in box, with all the original papers and everything included. This is, and probably will always be, my favorite game, and the fact occasionally I will actually pull out my Super Nintendo just so I can play this in the original intent way of playing it, and with my Super Nintendo like mini fight stick also. Nothing beats the feeling of playing the game with classic Chun, as well as also like Guile is a lot of fun in the game, surprisingly. But this is a game that will always hold a special place for me personally, as it was the very first fighting game I would ever have for Super Nintendo. Also, fun fact, the other version was my very first fighting game on the Sega Genesis, and that being Street Fighter II Championship Edition. But with that said, yep, my number 1 favorite Nintendo game of all time is, and probably always will be, Street Fighter II Turbo. Though Wind Waker is very close second. But with that said, I'll see y'all next time. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel. and stay safe out there.